8Bitdo continues to impress with their latest addition to their controller lineup. The SN30 Pro Plus Bluetooth gamepad has some cool new features, tons of compatibility, and today we're going to be taking a look at it, giving you guys my thoughts and impressions on this controller. So this does retail for $49.99. There's 3 different color variants. I went with the black one. I thought it was pretty slick. So with it being based off of the SN30 Pro, there has been some changes made to this controller, and definitely for the better, in my opinion. So let's take a look at the box before we open it up. Nothing really crazy going on here. Tells you what it's compatible with, but it is compatible with quite a bit more. Switch, Windows, Android, macOS, Steam. Includes the gamepad, USB cable, and a battery pack. What? Side of the box, nothing. Bottom, nothing. Side, nothing. The same information is pretty much listed on the back. The one thing I find odd is that with this being a controller that a lot of people are going to be interested in for the Switch, they really should be listing some more features on the box. Because just looking at this box, some places will sell this in retail. There's going to be certain stores that sell it, and not having a listing of some of the features that are supported on the Switch, I think, is a negative. That way people would know what they're actually getting themselves into. So let's go ahead and get this thing out and talk about that a little bit more. It is a tight fit with the sleeve. My God. But here we go. So you get a couple things in here. You do get a instruction manual. The instruction manual is useful in that it tells you how to sync it to various devices. Your Switch, Android, Windows, D input, X input, that kind of thing. You do have turbo functionality. It explains the battery, modes, what it's in, the battery status, that kind of thing. So this does include a rechargeable battery that is removable. That's the first time I've seen them do this. It's removable and replaceable. You can either use the battery pack that it comes with, which supplies about 20 hours of playtime, recharges within 4 hours, or you can use 2 AA's for around 20 hours of battery playtime. So that's pretty cool. Power saving mode, 1 minute with no Bluetooth connectivity, it'll power off. 15 minutes with Bluetooth connection but no use will power off. So definitely keep hold of this so you know how to sync everything. Very simple. I haven't had any issues with syncing. And they did insert this little card here about the 8Bitdo Ultimate software. This is really awesome, guys. I've been messing with this. We'll take a look at this in a moment as well, show you how it works. I think this is really sweet. This is cool that they've created this software, and this controller supports it, and I'm sure other controllers that they make will support this software as well with firmware updates and whatnot. Really cool. You can customize button mapping, sensitivity, all that good stuff. Really cool. We'll take a look at that in a second. So in the box, we do have our controller, and you do get a USB cable. USB cable, it's the USB-C, which is pretty nice. Plugs into the top for charging. If you're using the included batteries, pop it into whatever, the other USB side, and you're up and charging. So here's the front of the thing. Like I said, there's 3 different colors. I thought the black was pretty slick. We have our 2 analogs, a star button, our little heart button, home button type thing, our D-pad. The D-pad, from my testing, it does feel pretty good. I haven't had any complaints with it. It feels pretty similar to a lot of their other D-pads. For sure, the M30 D-pad, I think, is probably the ultimate one that they've done so far. But for that Super Nintendo or NES feel, that Nintendo feel, I think this D-pad does an excellent job. Our select and start, A, B, X, Y. Underneath is our indicator for if it's connected. So you have that. And then on the top, we do have a sync button. That does come in handy because you want to sync it. L, R, L2, R2. Very cool. The one thing I like about this, even though it does kind of have that lip, the previous versions of their controllers, like with how it was shaped, like I would scratch my fingers on those. On this one, I don't, because with these handles, it just feels so much better. And then it's kind of grooved right there. And even if you do scrape your finger on there, it's not like the previous versions where it kind of would scratch my finger. These kind of are beveled edge. So that's a good thing. And like I said, your index fingers kind of rest under this bump. Boom. So that's really cool. So there's that. Excellent feel the weight is there, feels really nice. Not a very lightweight controller. Now the cool thing, one of the more awesome things, in my opinion, is we have a rechargeable, removable battery pack. We've always had rechargeable batteries in 8BitDo controllers, but never removable to where you could easily replace them or use something else. This is huge. This is definitely a big welcome addition. This is going to be 1,000 milliamp hour battery. The life, like they said, it's about 20 hours. And, I haven't tested it for 20 hours, but typically their controllers, the batteries last quite a bit. So I'm not really doubting that too much, but for sure, your time with it could be less depending on how much you're using it, what you're using it on. And then they do have a sticker on the inside that tells you the different modes to sync your controller, which is kind of nice if you do lose this little piece of paper insert. I typically just put those back in the box in case I need to refer back to them, but it is cool that it's printed in there. So there we go. Really nice stuff. The other thing you could do, if this thing dies and you're like, man, I got to get gaming, you can plug in some double A's. I always use these Eneloop rechargeables, so that is definitely a cool thing. I'm kind of at an angle, so I'm struggling here to get batteries in here. That's kind of ridiculous, right? But there you go. You could use it that way. Everything feels really sturdy. Even removing the batteries, there's still some heft to this thing. So not really complaining on that end of it. It feels nice in the hands. Does not feel cheap whatsoever. It is a $50 controller, so you're saving a little bit of money compared to like a Switch Pro controller. But, it's just going to be up to you if this is going to be a worthwhile addition to using it for the Switch or for multiple other systems. I'm digging using this for various systems. I've used this on the Nintendo Switch without issue. It syncs very easily. No problems with that whatsoever. Simply just, when you first turn it on, you're going to hold that start and Y button, go into change grip order with another controller, and then hold that sync button on this controller for a few seconds. And then boom, you're synced up. Controller's ready to go. I have had no issues. Everything is feeling really good with this controller on the Nintendo Switch. Really digging it. I've also tested it on other things like the Raspberry Pi and the PC with no issue whatsoever. And I've also used it on the Super NT and on my Super NES using their retro receiver. And wow, it syncs easily. You just turn the controller on, hold the start button down for a few seconds, and then hold the sync button for a couple seconds, hold the sync button on your retro receiver, and you are in it to win it. You can use the analog or the D-pad with your Super Nintendo games. It feels really good. Now, really getting crazy with the controller, I do feel the right side analog stick, if you're getting a little nuts with it, your thumb may hit it occasionally. But for me, it hasn't been a big problem, but it is something that I noticed, and I know some people have those complaints with this style controller, Super Nintendo style controllers with analog sticks. But so far, I'm really digging using this for Super Nintendo games. It works out great. And then also, I know people are going to want to know, does this work on the PlayStation Classic? I've tried it in wired mode through Auto Bleem, and it won't recognize my button presses. So I don't know if there's something I'm doing wrong that way, or if it just won't work that way. If it's just trying to charge the controller, it recognizes that I have a controller plugged in. It recognizes it as a Nintendo controller, but it will not let me map the buttons. And RetroArch, RetroBoot, those kind of setups, you could get it set up just fine. Not too much of an issue. You do have to start the system up with another controller and plug this in. But for me, that's not really how I want to use it. So I did use it with the 8BitDo receiver for the PlayStation Classic, the Bluetooth USB receiver, and it functions perfectly fine. I'm not getting any little arrow on the top of the screen. I can use my analog stick in my games. It works as the D-pad, and it works fine. It feels really great in my opinion. Really digging this controller. So, hey, I love it. I definitely can highly recommend it. But let's go ahead and take a look at what they're calling the Ultimate Software, which I do think is pretty damn sweet. Let's take a look. Okay, guys, so the Ultimate Software is available on the support tab on the 8bitdo.com website. Simply click this icon, download it. It will be a zip file. Unzip it, run the program, and you're ready to customize. So once you run it, you will be greeted to this, and it's going to ask you, connect your 8BitDo device to the PC via USB. So I have the included USB cable already plugged into my PC. I'm going to go ahead and plug that into the controller now. And it should just take a second to communicate, and boom, pops up. The first time you do this, it may have to recognize your controller. It could take a couple extra seconds. For me, it didn't take very long. So now you'll be greeted to this screen right here. The first thing is going to be mapping. We're going to go through all this stuff in a second. But the important thing that I think is pretty cool is that you do have multiple profiles. So you can create profiles, or you can just use the default profile. That's going to be handy because if you're going to change mapping of buttons for various different games or systems, then hey, you could load up different profiles for each. Really cool that that's included with the software. And you also have some settings over here. When I first plugged my controller in, it did update the firmware. So that was really cool that everything's kind of included in the software. So it tells you what version of the software you're on, if there's an update available, same thing for your controller, or you can reset to factory settings. So those are the options you have. So let's take a look at the mapping. So you have the icon of your controller here, just listing what all the buttons are, which we already know. We know what the A, B, X, Y buttons are. But the cool thing is they're listed all on the side here, and you have a switch mode and X input mode. So switch mode, I think, is going to be something a lot of people are going to have plenty of uses for. Games like Smash Bros. And maybe some other games that I can't think of at the moment, but I'm sure there's a lot of examples out there where you would like to be able to change what the buttons actually do. And you can do that through this software. It syncs it to the controller. So all the buttons are listed on the side here. And then on the right side is where you can change it. So for example, the A button, they have the arrow here and it's saying, hey, it's being recognized as the A button right now. But what if we're tired of the A button being the A button? We could change it to the B button, for example, because we's crazy. And then if you click sync to controller, boom, now your controller is going to recognize the A button as the B button for any of the games that you play with this profile that you saved it to. I think that is really cool. So it just syncs it to the controller like the firmware that's on there. Nothing else that you really have to do unless you want to change it back or load up a different profile that you have changed. So each of the buttons can be customized, including the D-pad directional buttons and the L3 and R3 button presses on the analogs. So everything, you can swap any button you want. So like the home button, A, B, X, Y, all the face buttons, the shoulder buttons, or D-pad directions. Definitely going to be a useful thing, in my opinion, for a lot of people. So really cool. If you don't want to use that, you could just reset anything you've changed. Pretty simple stuff there. X input for any systems that need X input. Obviously, it's showing that the buttons have changed because some of them get swapped around when you're in X input mode. But it's really cool that you have that diagrammed here and you can go through and change everything up. So since the buttons are listed A, B, X, Y, now they're what? Instead of X, it's Y. Instead of A, it's B. It's pretty much, you know, the Xbox controller style instead of Nintendo style. So depending on what you're using it for, you can swap that around. Now going into control sticks, this is pretty cool too. You can go ahead and change the sensitivity. So you have that. The purple shaded area is going to be showing the active area. Really cool stuff that you can do with both sticks if you want to change the sensitivity up. And then you can also invert the X and Y axis for both the left and right analogs. Or if you've got a reason for it, you can swap the sticks around where the left is recognized as the right and the right as the left. I'm not sure what that would be useful for. I'm sure somebody can enlighten me on why you would want to do that. But for me, I can't really think of a reason. But I'm sure somebody out there will have a reason to want to do that. So it's cool. You got options. Triggers, you got some similar stuff you can do with sensitivity as far as, you know, how you press them and how they're recognized. And you can also swap them around as well. The left to the right, right to the left. Really cool. Vibration. This is another one that's pretty neat. It's kind of hard for me to demonstrate, but if you press these buttons to change the strength of the rumble, you feel it in your hands. So you can be like, okay, I'm comfortable with that. But I would say having it max, it's not a crazy heavy rumble. It's fine. It's recognizable. You could feel that the controller's rumbling when you're playing games and when you're utilizing the software. It's a nice little rumble. Go down to 0. There's no rumble. 1, It's a very slight rumble. All these options you can feel very easily. And like I said, to me, I mean, that's subjective, but it's not a real heavy rumble, but it's definitely there. And it feels fine to me. It's not like extremely weak, but it's not crazy powerful. It's perfect in my opinion when you leave it to 5. But you can change that up on both the left and right. So that's pretty cool. Then the other neat thing that you can do here that some people are really going to have some uses for is setting up macros. Oh my God, this should be illegal, right? Especially, you know, competitive anyway, and competitive gaming. You shouldn't use stuff like this. But here you go. You can set up some macros. So you would select a button to input that macro, the A button, then you would just start putting in whatever commands that we want. Boom, we got that. Okay, let's add the A button. So once you've done that, you go ahead and hit enter, and now it created that macro. If you want to edit it, you can go ahead and click that, go back and edit it, delete some things if you need to. Boom, we want all this to be triggered. There we go, hit enter, and now you have a macro. Delete it, hit the little trash can. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes, please. So really cool that we have all these amazing options with this software. Macros, sensitivity on the triggers and sticks, remapping of buttons. 8Bitdo's really outdone themselves this time, I think, you know, especially with this software. This software is really taking things to the next level. I really appreciate that they put in the time and effort to do something like this. I've messed with this quite a bit and it functions just fine. I've had no issues with remapping or anything like that. You know, the sensitivity stuff is something that you'd kind of have to get used to if you do need to change that. For me, I have no issues just leaving it at 100%, but you've got those options. So really cool. I'm digging this controller. I've had no real issues, nothing that I could really harp on with this. I do love the Super Nintendo layout. So this is a controller for me that I really dig. I have no issues with. If this is something that fits your style, your preference, it's very comfortable. Having those grips, it feels great. The triggers, all the buttons feel great. The D-pad is functioning pretty damn well, in my opinion. Not the best D-pad in the world, but I have no real complaints on it. I do prefer the rolling D-pad that they use in the M30, but hey, you know, that's why we have multiple different controllers. Maybe they'll do an M30 Pro Plus version similar to this. I think that would be pretty neat. But hey, if you want to pick up this controller, link will be in the description. I'm highly recommending it, and I have not liked everything that 8Bitdo has done, but this one, hells yes, it is my favorite so far. So with that said, guys, I really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out, bye-bye, and boom. Bye!